Good morning, everyone. Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Good.
Morning.
Good morning. We're going to go ahead and get started. This is ACID Lee County, which is everything. We have presenters that are presenting this morning that will give you all the information you need about Lee County. So I think we're going to have a great day. We will start at 9 o'clock. It will end probably about 3:15. We'll take a lunch break at 1 o'clock. At 12 o'clock, I'm sorry. We'll take a lunch break at 12. We'll come back at 1. We will have the Linnell Sturgeon. She's with the Property Appraiser's Office. We'll come back and start with Linnell. And we have Q Raphael. She is the chair of the Global Council here at RPCRA. And she is the co-chair of the Professional Development Committee here at RPCRA. She will be our moderator for today. So right now, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Q because I do see our first presenter, Adam Malloy. He is here. And I've made you co-host, Adam, so you can share your screen if you want. And when you're done, if you would just, I think you make me co-host again, if I'm correct. Just make me co-host and turn it back over. But right now, I'll turn it over to Q Raphael, and she will be our moderator for this for today. So thank you all again for coming and being with us for ACID Lee County.
Good morning, everyone. And thank you so much, Angela, for that introduction. You guys are in for a treat today. Welcome to ACID Lee County. So without further ado, we're going to get started. We have a wonderful program lined up for you today. Why? Because you are awesome. Thank you so much for joining us. Out of 8,000 realtors, you have taken time out of your schedule to join us today. So without further ado, we're going to start off with Lee County School District, the coordinator and community engagement, Adam Malloy. Welcome up.
Thank you guys so much for having me. It's an honor to be with you guys to present some information about our school district and kind of how it connects with your industry. So our school district is, the heart of our young community, and it is extremely large. We're one of the largest school districts in the state and also in the nation, and we're doing a lot of good things. Just a little background about myself. I was born and raised here in Fort Myers, 1984, Lee Memorial Hospital, and then kind of went through our public school system and then returned after college with a degree in history and taught history at North Fort Myers High School for about 12 years. Transitioned over into community engagement because I love presenting. I love the positive aspects of our school district and also those areas that we can improve upon, connecting with community members to do that. And that's where I'm at right now. So I'm going to share my screen and hopefully bring a little bit of energy about student enrollment to you guys. I know your industry is extremely important as it relates to communicating information to your clients about what subzone they live in and what schools they can go to. So hopefully everybody should be able to see our student enrollment, present, past, and future. And then I added in a little part with you there. So my job title is Coordinator of Community Engagement. It took some parts from some previous jobs in some different areas and departments, combined them together. But really my job is just to get out there, connect, to listen, to answer any questions relative to strategic initiatives, school projects, curriculum, anything. And if I don't have any of the information today for your questions, I will certainly research it for you and get back to you. And I will provide my cell phone, my email, any sort of contact information that you need for more school district information. My agenda is real simple. I'm just going to give you guys some information on student enrollment, which is how we assign students to schools. It's a little bit different, and I'm sure you've encountered it with your clients as they've come down from maybe more traditional neighborhood assignment or boundary assignment or feeder patterns. And then I'll go over a little bit of what it looks like now, what led us there. So understanding our history and that importance of understanding our history as we move forward into the future. We do have in the works a new student assignment plan coming down the line, maybe in the next few years, which I think will make it a lot easier, strategic and more simple for you guys and your clients. And then, I'm gonna end off with kind of a Realtor school district connection, how we can move forward together, how we can kind of stay in contact with one another. And my overall goal is basically just to engage and inform the participants about student enrollment, present, past, and future. All right, so student enrollment, the basics. It's a process which assigns students to schools. Now, when you traditionally think of student assignment, your most common student assignment mechanisms, you have attendance zones, boundaries, which assign based on where you live. You go to that school. You think of neighborhood, your geographical school or your proximity school, the school in which you are closest to. And then you also think about a feeder pattern from elementary to middle to high school. And we have none of those here in Lee County. We have none of those more traditional systems, and we're going to learn a little bit about what we have, why we have it, and then how to kind of navigate that. Now, I found this one really interesting, and I'm sorry if this is one of your listings, but you can find, information about each house on Zillow, its listing, and then I did put an arrow down there below. You see that it says walking distance to Allen Park Elementary School. That seems to indicate to me that the listing agent is telling the client that if they purchase this house on 1629 Marabella Avenue, right in the McGregor corridor, that they will be gaining entrance into Allen Park. It seems to insinuate that connection with Allen Park, and that is not the case. Even if you live within walking distance, you are not guaranteed assignment, especially if you miss open enrollment. And we're going to go through what open enrollment is, how you need to inform your clients about the dates of open enrollment. And so I found this fascinating, and luckily in a lot of the listings you don't see this, which means that our realtors are informed and they are prepared to tell their clients. And I'm going to kind of go through what I think the best way to navigate this is. I did want to show you this is a little map from ArcGIS. We use a lot of ArcGIS software. All of those dots are students, and those students attend Allen Park Elementary. So you can see that they are traveling very far in our choice system to attend Allen Park. And all of those students are bypassing closer schools to go to Allen Park Elementary. And I just used that because, in the listing it said Allen Park, walking distance. Well, a lot of kids that are walking distance to Allen Park are not going to Allen Park. And a lot of kids that live a lot further away are actually being bused in to Allen Park Elementary School. I did want to give you guys another example. All of these dots are students on the map, and they are attending Harns Marsh Elementary School in the East Zone. The East Zone, if you live in East Subzone 2, you are ranking and selecting 17 different elementary schools. And that is, that's something that you guys have to be aware of, the system, how it operates, and what the opportunities are in terms of school choice. So I took this quote directly from our student assignment plan. And if you haven't read it, I'm going to encourage you guys to kind of maybe just do what we would call in grad school, kind of gutting the fish, checking out the major components, the major pieces of the plan, because ultimately this is the system, the framework in which parents will be navigating to get their school of choice. So this is, paragraph 1 in the student assignment plan, that the plans focus on offering, I highlighted parental choice, right? So parents have a choice. Reflects a belief in the educational benefits of providing a variety of options. Now, that variety can range from, on the lowest choice number at the elementary level, 6 schools, to the highest in East Subzone 2, 17 different elementary schools. Okay, I did put some pictures up there to personalize it. not only am I a stakeholder in the district as just a community member, but I'm also a father of 2 children. My son attends Tanglewood Elementary, and my daughter will be following him there next year. And so I just put up some pictures there so you can see that I'm also someone that had to navigate the process. So this is going to be a little bit intimidating. This is the choice matrix table that I made in preparation for the presentation. And our system, you rank your subzone schools. So there are, let's call it 9 subzones, right? 3 in each of the large geographic zones. And I'll show you the map here in just a second. And you rank in your subzone and the adjacent subzones. Right? So if you live in South Zone 1, right, which I did, I ranked South Subzone 1 and South Subzone 2. And so that's my little like thinking emoji. I had to rank those 12 schools from Edison Park all the way down to Three Oaks. And there was an opportunity to attend based on my ranking and a number of other preferences, each one of those 12 elementary schools, right? So you can see when you are showing your clients a home, one thing that is very, very important is to let them know what subzone they live in, right? And what adjacent subzones they have so that they will know which schools they should check out, which schools they should contact, get more information, about, and which schools they're interested in attending. The system, as we have built more and more schools and, we're ranking more and more schools, you'll notice why we're going to try to rein this in as we move forward in the future, because ranking 12 schools seems a bit inefficient, and transporting to 12 schools, to me, is wildly inefficient. And so those are some things that we will be working on as the years progress. You can see in East Subzone 2, if you can see my little marker, you are ranking 17 schools because you are ranking not only East Subzone 2, but East Subzone 1 and 3 because they are adjacent. And so, yeah, a little bit of thinking, and this is a presentation that I can share, but it's also on the website and the information that I'm going to provide for you, later on in the presentation. So this is what our current map looks like. You can see that the district is broken into 3 large geographic zones, and that each zone is broken into those subzones that we were mentioning. So you can see in the McGregor corridor, you have South Subzone 1, and then you would rank South Subzone 1 and S2, right? If you lived in S2, you would rank S1, S2, and S3, so on and so forth for Cape Coral. And the East Zone, which is the majority of the Tree Line, Gateway, and Lehigh area. Now, I didn't want to make this. I know this is a little bit text heavy, but this is essentially our process and how you gain entrance into a school if it is over-selected. Okay, so we use a lottery process in situations in which the number of applicants at the school exceeds the available seats. This is how you get those extra preferences to try to gain entrance into that school. And it varies by level. So if you notice that I did highlight a zone attractor program, each one of our high schools has an attractor program that you can apply to and gain entrance into. And I think that that's really important because at the high school level, we have a lot of families that are very keen on, I really want my kid to do ACE Cambridge or IB, or I really want them to go into the career academies. And so they will apply to get into that program, gain admissions, and that is one of the preferences. So it's not just an open lottery, a random lottery. We do have that aspect if there is none of these factors that are involved. I also highlighted proximity 1. That is that walking distance, that safe walking distance 2-mile area. If you do live within 2 miles of a school, that is a heavy preference, but you have to rank it number 1, and you have to you have to make sure that you get that ranking done or that choice done during open enrollment, which is our choice period of selection. And that's extremely important, I think, for us to communicate with you guys and to stay in contact with you guys, because if you have families that are moving in and buying homes during a certain period, they may need to be aware of the deadlines and what is coming up in terms of important dates for open enrollment, whether they're entirely new to the district or whether they're entering into kindergarten, 6th or 9th grade. But these are the preferences that we have for our school choice program. And I did want to highlight the zone attractor programs, which are primarily at the high school level, and then also proximity 1, which applies to all levels. Some schools are a little bit limited in terms of their capacity. I'll give you an example. Edison Park, which is a very small school, right, but is also very highly selected. You could run into an issue there even if you live within 2 miles of Edison Park, just because of the size and because of how competitive Edison Park is to applicants. A little bit of the, how we got here. So you're probably like, oh my gosh, this is insane. There are dozens of schools of choice. How did we get here, right? And it really starts, the county and the school district operated a segregated school system up until 1964, in which the Blaylock case was filed with the federal courts, coming on the heels of the Civil Rights Act of '64. You could think like Blaylock for Lee County was like Brown versus the Board of Education for America. And this is extremely important because while it doesn't state that choice is going to emerge, choice emerges as the district is trying to remove itself from the federal court order in the 1990s. And I just put up a picture there. That's Reverend Isidore Edwards. He was the leader. He was the leader of the NAACP and also Friendship Baptist Church, in which they were actively seeking to integrate the schools. And from really 65, 66 until 1999, Lee County was, all of their student assignment plans were monitored by the Middle District of Florida to ensure that they were integrated both by student and by faculty. I'm not going to read all of the timeline pieces there, and I will just highlight that as the district in the 1990s, so from 1995 to 99, they were trying to remove themselves from the federal court order by adopting school choice, right? School choice first controlled choice and then school choice really emerged out of that attempt to gain unitary status. Unitary status means the district has removed itself from the federal court order. No longer is the federal court monitoring the plans, but in order to do that, Lee County developed school choice, right? First controlled, right? Meaning that they still used race and criteria, racial criteria, but then out of that emerged school choice. And that was a huge process taking really a number of years, working with the community to say, hey, how are we going to move forward out of this court-ordered desegregation suit? And this, that's really where school choice came out of. And I think that that's important to note. It wasn't caused directly by the suit, but it was caused by the county and the district trying to get out of the suit. And I think that that's important because we really need to understand our history and how we have developed into what is a little bit more numerous selection than they had in 1964 or 1965. Right, for the future, we are turning our eyes to something a little bit more strategic using the latest software. You might have heard of this as the proximity plan.
This is the school board, and they just finished.
Oh, sorry. I thought I heard somebody in there. Yeah, so for the future, we are looking to create smaller zones, be a bit more strategic, create a little bit better community schools of choice. We still want to maintain choice. We know that it's really popular. We can really strengthen equity and diversity within those smaller zones and improve transportation efficiency. So just to give you a little sneak peek, this is a few years down the road. We will be creating smaller zones. You won't have the ability to rank adjacent zones. You'll have 3 or 4 schools of choice. It will greatly improve a number of our inefficiencies in our current system. 1, the busing is out of control, right? 2, we really have some issues in terms of the evenness of student distribution. Resegregation trends not great in a number of our elementary schools, especially in the South Zone, and this will give us a little bit better ability to monitor the distribution. But this is a little, we're kind of in a holding pattern just with leadership reorganization. And we're really looking forward, I think, to being a bit more strategic with student enrollment. And these are just some things with you guys that we can stay in contact, that we can stay in touch, and just make sure that you're aware of the changes that are happening. Overall, moving forward with this new concept of proximal choice, a better system for our community and future, reconnecting really parents and their schools of choice, really improving the diversity at the elementary school level, and also the funding that can be redirected into the schools with associated transportation savings. Now, in terms of us, you guys, and I took out that clip there, the Royal Palm Coast Realtor Association, serving Southwest Florida, the school district also serving, the residents of Lee County as the public institution for education. We really need to be properly informing our clients about their subzone, their schools of choice, the important dates, understanding those deadlines for open enrollment. And staying connected with changes. And I think that's, you don't have to memorize the plan for student enrollment. You just have to be aware of its central tenets, right? That you live in a subzone, you will rank and select schools within that subzone and adjacent subzone. And based on a certain number of preferences, you will gain entrance into a school in your subzone and adjacent subzone. And I think that's easily communicated. We teach the same curriculum at the elementary level and at the middle and high school level at every one of our schools. So that's important to note. But also just really understanding that this is something that we have to do together. And if you ever have a client or a question, you can email me, you can email student enrollment, and we should provide a timely response. I did want to draw your attention to the plan for student enrollment, and all of this information you can find on the website. I'm just going to take you there right now and just kind of show you a little bit what's on the student enrollment website. You can get to it by leeschools.net/student enrollment / is just being a little bit slow pulling up here. Maybe too slow. Like it's loading. Well, in the meantime, while it's loading, I am not someone who just kind of looked at the student enrollment plan yesterday. I've spent the majority of my graduate school work studying student assignment plans in the history of our student assignment plans here in Lee County. I'm one of the, I guess what you would call like one of the bigger nerds as it relates to student assignment. I just think that it sets up the framework for our entire system and how important it is. It's not pulling up there, and hopefully it will. Hopefully it's not some sort of ransom attack on our student enrollment page, but I will put up the website in the chat box. There is some information that is important for you guys for registration and what the families need: a photo ID, birth certificate, social security card if available, a physical, certification of immunization, and the proof of address. That's really what you need to get the registration going. And we do have a flyer which I can share with you guys, that basically has the required documents for registration, right? Students new to the district, students returning or re-enrolling, and then it has the location, which is right here at the central colonial office. Used to be the old Metro Mall if you're from the area. So these are the different requirements, and then I can provide these important dates. I know it's a little bit wordy or text heavy, but basically it shows you when open enrollment for the next school year starts, when advanced program applications are due. So it is a little bit of information, but I think very vital, especially for parents that are new to the system. My wife's family, they moved down from Connecticut, where they had one school assigned for their neighborhood, right? They come to middle school and they have, 10 choices. They were overwhelmed. They were confused. They didn't really know the why behind it. And I think that's an area where we can really work together. And, I think that we can have a better connection with you guys, your industry, making sure that you are communicating that information. Now, I think moving forward, we have the gem of trying to stay connected with you guys. I did put up the website there, leeschools.net/student enrollment. Talking last week, I did think that there was some decent opportunity as we expand our career and college readiness, especially our career readiness programs, of maybe getting your industry into our schools to help better prepare our students as it relates to real estate, as it relates to the buying and selling of homes. I think Caroline said it great. She was like, it's not just about, becoming a realtor and, that profession. It's about knowing your community and knowing the history of your community and knowing the trends of your community. And I think that we recognize the priority and the importance of real estate in our area. And we really want to perhaps maybe move in that direction. We were looking up some of those programs in which we can incorporate real estate, and there are some opportunities for us to move in that direction. So I'm excited about that. I do apologize for talking quickly, and also that the website was not loading, but I will put my information in the chat box, and I look forward to any questions that you might have. My name's Adam Malloy, and I'm excited to be a stakeholder in our community and also to address any issues that you guys might have. You guys can also ask questions unrelated to student enrollment. That was just my topic of choice because I thought it pertained most to your industry.
Thank you, Adam. Does anyone have any questions? If you do, unmute yourself and you can ask your question.
Hi, I do have a question. This is Ruth Wagner, Remax Trend in Cape Coral. If a student is to leave the school system for a while and they come back, do they go back to the school where they were at before, or do they go to the end of the line?
They would have to re-enroll. Yeah, they would have to re-enroll. Now, there was some circumstances this past year with with virtual school in which they stayed tethered to their school, but in choice and in the lottery, they will have to re-enroll and then go through the process again.
Can you tell me where to find that subzone? Is it specific by address, maybe in Lee County, or where would I find that besides that map?
Yes, I will. It should be up on the student enrollment website, in which you can enter your address and see your schools of choice. But yes, I can get that information. I can get that information to you. Let me just see if the website's pulling up right now.
So while Adam is doing that, for those who have a question and may feel a little shy with unmuting and asking, feel free to go ahead and put it in the chat, and I will be more than happy to read it for you.
To the last question about there's an interactive map in which you can insert your address and see your subzone and your choices. There's also the map that's up there, so you can check out that link that I put in below my cell phone number. That's a great question, Ashley. If someone moves to a home in a different zone, can they stay in their current school, or how easy is it to then transfer to a school in their new zone? Yeah, and that's something that they encounter a decent amount, as people move into new zones. Transportation, obviously not provided to the school. Once they change their address, yeah, they will have to go through the process of selecting a new school in that zone, and it shouldn't be that challenging. It should just be maybe even applying, like if they were in let's say they were at North Fort Myers High School, they were in the arts program, and they moved to South Zone, and they want to go to Cypress, they could probably go through that same application process. Elementary schools, maybe a little bit more tricky, but elementary schools, they're more numerous, and they also give us a little bit more ability with the preferences. So proximity 1, proximity 2, and 3. All right, so Mr. Rodriguez, many clients relocating from the East Coast inquire about charter schools. Yeah, charter schools are under our umbrella, but they operate independently, as I'm sure you're aware. We do have a decent number of charter schools under our umbrella. Whether it's the Cape Coral charter system, the Oasis charter schools, over in Gateway, there's a number of charter schools. They take applications, and they run everything kind of independently. They're not a part of our student assignment process or plan. You apply to those charter schools independently, and they are responsible, for their own marketing and also the management of the schools. That is one of the bigger changes that I've seen studying the history, and it's really follows state and national trends, as you mentioned, Mr. Rodriguez, is the growth of charter systems. We have seen, the rise and fall of a number of charter systems, and maybe that speaks more to their fragile nature as it relates to the business market of it. But yeah, that is something that we do have. I want to say that we're, maybe in that 20 to 24 charter school range. Some of them are, maybe certificate, retaking classes. Maybe they're a little bit smaller. That sort of operation. But there are some large ones. And some that have a decent number of applicants, students, and staff, and have been here for a decent amount of time. So yeah, we do have charter systems under our umbrella. They do operate independently, and applications to those charter schools would be just really with the school and yourself.
So I have a question for you, Adam.
Yes, ma'am.
With the change in the way that school has been done today, because we have some that are doing virtual, like my kids right now, they're in a room locked up doing school because of the pandemic. So moving forward, how is that looking as far as virtual schooling for 2021 going into 2022 and forward?
Yeah, that's a fantastic question. I think one of the silver linings of the pandemic, it showed us from a technology infrastructure standpoint, we were in a good spot that if need be, we could stay connected with kids via technology. Now, Lee Home Connect was really not built to sustain for a long period of time, but we still have the Lee virtual option for parents, that want to keep that kind of virtual connection, with curriculum and staff. But Lee Home Connect, I think it was a very flexible attempt to try to get us through the early to mid stages of this past year. It was very, as you might imagine, and as a teacher myself, it was very challenging for teachers to really adjust and to be highly effective in instruction while they were teaching both in person and virtually on Lee Home Connect. But I was very happy that we were able to do Lee Home Connect, and then next year, Lee Home Connect will not be there, but there will be the Lee virtual option. But it does give us a great framework for if need be. So like, let's say a student's sick, or for whatever reason, the student's out for a decent amount of time. It does give us, a good connection with kids via Google Classroom. It was nice, my last few years of teaching, there was really no, like, what did I miss type of question, because everything from the day we posted videos, lessons, assignments, discussions was up on that framework of Google Classroom. So I like it as a supplement tool, and something that we can use if we need to. And then obviously for those kids and parents that really value the virtual connection, we have Lee Virtual School. So Yeah, that's a great question. It's one of those silver linings, I think, of the past year. Our teachers, I think, they really appreciated all the support from the community and a lot of the connection that they had with the community in terms of understanding how challenging this was. But yeah, as the kids, so we're back to about like 83% in person instruction, and that I think that we got to really focus on that. But yeah, that's fantastic. I was very impressed with the Lee Home Connect pivot, and I thought it provided exactly what we needed when we needed it. But from an instructional standpoint and from a number standpoint, we had to. I think it no longer is going to be from a Lee Home Connect standpoint. We'll still have Lee virtual. Sorry for rambling on that.
No, thank you. I mean, I know there still are parents that are interested in continuing that platform of choice. So I know my kids are ready to go back to school, and I'm ready for them to go back to school. So thank you. Any more questions?
No, and just on another side note, it does allow us with expanded summer learning opportunities too, that a lot of kids are going to be enriching their learning with their Chromebooks over the summer through our different educational apps and things like that. So that really is helpful for us to not experience that summer loss.
All right, so if we don't have any more questions, let me check to see if our next speaker is available. Did you have anything else, Adam, that you wanted to share with our realtors? You definitely gave a lot of information, and I know personally as a realtor myself, I appreciate the information that you have given everyone.
Yeah, and I think just having a connection with you guys, like you can always, if you ever have a question, you can always email, text, or just put me in contact with any of your clients, and we can try to help them through the process. Because it can be a little bit intimidating. Me as a stakeholder and being aware and studying the process as a parent, I was still very overwhelmed. I still felt, I was anxious about how do I rank these schools, and I felt so bad ranking some of the schools, 11, 12, and I had no idea because I was just really focused on my little 2 or 3 schools that were close. So definitely stay in contact, and I really appreciate your guys' industry and commitment to serving your clients with the best information.
Absolutely. So we did have one more question in the chat. Are you reading that, Adam, or would you like for me to read it?
Yeah, no, so I answered the question about the charter schools, but then, Kelly just put down there that, she believes strongly that you need to know your industry. And in this business, knowing your community is just as important. And I agree. And working on the new student assignment plan, using history as a guide has been so important. One thing that you can see in your industry is how fast paced the growth is. And so as our growth is, we're trying to build 10 new schools, in the next 15 years to accommodate this growth. So with, when I went to school, they were always struggling with, we were always in portables because, they weren't keeping up with the growth. And that's one thing that we could really use your guys' support on is really just staying connected so that these parents know that, there are a few new schools that are coming online, and they will be available for choice. Gateway High School opens next year. The new Lehigh Acres Middle opens next year. And we have the Innovation School with FGCU off Treeline. We have the new Estero K-8 school off Three Oaks, which is opening up. And those are things that are coming down the line, and not everybody wants to watch the school board workshop meetings or action meetings to see these things being discussed. So it's really important for us to work together to make sure that parents are aware.
Right, absolutely. All right, so I'm not seeing any more questions, and I think we might have to move our agenda around just a little bit. Oh, no, we don't. We have our speaker, our next speaker actually here. So thank you so much, Adam, for all of your knowledge and expertise and your service to our community, and also volunteering your time today to be part of this panelist. So thank you very much. All right, so without further ado, we're going to speed it on up. Actually, we're going to go to Florida Fish and Wildlife Commission. And she is the Panther Outreach Specialist, Ashley O'Connor. You're going to mute yourself, Ashley.
Hi, everyone. Good morning. All right, I will go ahead. Can you hear me?
Yes, good morning.
Okay, good. I'll go ahead and share my screen and get going. Okay, how is that?
We do not see anything as of yet. We just see Ashley O'Connor has shared her start screen sharing. So we don't see a PowerPoint yet.
Okay, I think there's a little bit of a delay, so I'm going to try to go slower today.
We see it now.
Okay, well, hi everyone. Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to get to talk to this group, specifically because y'all are in contact with all of those many people that are moving to Florida every day. So like I was introduced, my name is Ashley O'Connor, and I do Panther outreach and education for our state's wildlife agency, which is the Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission, or just FWC for short. So here is my email address. Feel free to save this, and if you need any further resources about panthers or any other animals of interest, I can probably get the correct contact for you. So I'll go ahead and get started. And my next slide is going to be an image of some data from cats, from collared panthers that we started collaring in 1981 up until about 2020. So I'm kind of zoomed in on Google Earth here to show mostly just Lee County, because I think that's where the bulk of y'all are working. But here you can just see sort of the areas where panthers are going to gravitate towards more because of the habitat that's available there. So this is just cats that have a collar on. And currently we do not collar many cats. I think we have maybe 3 that have collars on them right now. And that's in stark contrast to the beginning of our program in the 80s, where we wanted to collar every cat we could get our hands on. So I'm just saying this to let you know this is a subset of cats that are out on the landscape. So you can see that they are present in parts of Lee County. And now I'm going to show you an image of our Panther sightings website. So this is a crowdsourced website of sorts. So if my neighbor saw a panther in their yard and they got a picture of the animal or maybe of its tracks or something, they could send it into our website and we would verify, yes, this is actually a panther. And then that data point goes up on our website. A lot of times we get photos of domestic cats, bobcats, sometimes dog tracks, things like that. But this is sort of a crowdsource of data from the Lee County area, and you can look all over Florida to see where people have share their sightings. So you can see like the 6 Mile Cypress area and the Crew area, usually more of the rural areas, but sometimes where those sort of thin wildlife corridors, cats will try to move through there, sometimes not knowing that they're heading towards the city. They don't know that if they hop over this fence, they're going to end up in someone's yard versus, a wildlife preserve. So here's an outline of what I will discuss today. I'll go over some biology and ecology of these cats, some information about their range, impacts to the population, how to avoid interacting with this creature, and then what to do if you do find yourself in contact with a panther. So what is a Florida panther? They are technically called, their scientific name is Puma concolor, which means a cat of one color. And then they have a subspecies name called corii. And to the general public, the subspecies designation isn't terribly important. It denotes in the scientific world some differences between animals, usually geographic differences, sometimes physical or genetic slight variations. So they are a cat of one color. They're a large feline for the America standards. They're a hypercarnivore, so they eat almost entirely meat. They're hunters. And then this cat has many, many names. It goes by cougar, mountain lion, puma, catamount, painter, ghost cat, panther, and the list goes on. It depends on where you are as to kind of what that local name is. But this is all the same cat. So if someone lives in California and they're talking about a mountain lion, it's the same as if someone were in Montana talking about a cougar, and it's the same as someone in Florida talking about a panther. Now, there might be slight differences, maybe our cats might be slightly smaller, but as a whole, they are just the same creature. So a little bit about the biology of these animals. They can breed year-round because of our mild climate here. The male and female will come together during estrus, and then after that about week to 10 days of time, the male will have no further part in the raising of his offspring. So the kittens are going to stay she's going to gestate or be pregnant for about 3 months, and then she'll give birth alone in a den to typically 2 or 3 kittens. They're born very helpless, eyes closed, ears folded down. And they are going to stay with mom for a very long time. They're going to be with her for about 9 to 18 months. So in the beginning of that time period, they're just going to be in the den on milk from their mother. And then as they become more able-bodied, they're going to start venturing out of the den. Then they'll eventually go hunting with mom. So when they're about 9 to 18 months is their dispersal. So this is like our kids going off to college time. It's time for them to go up on their own. And then that will allow the female to reproduce again. The female offspring of the mother are not going to go that far. They're not inclined to travel great distances to find a home range. And they're also not, those female interactions, they're not territorial like males are. The male offspring, however, of that mother, that young male is going to feel inclined to go a great distance. And it's looking for its own territory, and it's going to have to cross other male territories in the area. And that's a dangerous, part of life for that young male. But that male is going to go off a lot further than the female will. And that's important because of their slow expansion throughout the state. So these animals can live about 10 to 15 years in the wild. Obviously, in captivity, that can be much longer. The longest the oldest known female that we are aware of was about 19 years old when her collar, so this cat here in this image has a radio collar around its neck. And that allows us to know where they are and many things about their life history and their day-to-day activities. But that caller, the Madrian, died when she was 19 years old. So she could have lived even longer than that. So next up, we're going to talk about food. This is kind of the unpleasant part for, I'm sure many of you are not, science folks and into this specific aspect of learning, but, it can be unpleasant for some people. But panthers are carnivores, so they just eat meat. Their favorite foods are going to be deer and hogs that make up the majority of their diet, but they're also going to eat other small mammals that live in the area. So raccoons, possums, armadillos, things of that nature. And then as humans, we bring animals into our life, pets and livestock. And unfortunately, at the right time, at the wrong time, I guess, in the wrong place, those animals can fall onto the menu of what a panther will try to eat. So we have a list here of all of the different creatures that we have documented panthers killing and maybe attempting to eat. And so you can see some livestock and also some pets. So we'll kind of revisit that topic on how to avoid that happening to you. So the ecology of this animal, they play an important role in keeping the balance of an ecosystem. They're an apex predator, so as adults, they don't have anything to worry about aside from maybe humans and our cars. But within that animal kingdom of flora and fauna, they're not concerned about other animals in the area. They're also considered a keystone species. So that means, like I had alluded to, they play a very important role in the balance of an ecosystem. And taking them out can have a cascading effect of kind of degrading in the ecosystem. So think of like in the Northeast where they don't have pumas anymore, they don't have wolves any longer. They have a problem with deer, people's gardens, people hitting deer with their vehicle, the deer population becoming too large and sick because there's nothing there to kind of slow their expansion. So these animals are also considered umbrella species. And what I mean by this is when we are protecting land for panthers, which need a lot of connected land, we're protecting all the other plants and animals that live in that ecosystem. So bears, gopher tortoise, glass lizards, red cockaded woodpeckers. And then in the middle, you can see some children and we're even protecting land for our future generations. We want to have these wild spaces where future generations can go out and explore and learn and hopefully even see some of these creatures. So a little bit of the detail of this animal, they are documented at 60 to 160 pounds here in Florida. And females are going to average around 80 pounds, males maybe around 130. They're quite long, 7 to 8 feet from the tip of the nose to the tip of the tail. And then they're going to be around 2 feet at the shoulder. So the coloration of these animals, as you've seen in the past 14 slides or so, these animals are tan. They're tan all over, aside from a slight bit of black that they have on the back of their ears, which is important to remember, a tiny bit around their mouth or muzzle, and then a little bit on the tip of the tail. But I'm assuming you haven't noticed that in the photos. It's very slight coloration, and it's never more than those little tiny bits in those places. And that tan color can look like a reddish tan, as you can see here on the image on the left, or maybe a more grayish tan as the photo on the right. It can vary in its hues, but it's always tan. As when panthers are born, they're born tan, but with spots, and that spotting helps camouflage them. when they're vulnerable and when they're infants. So you can see in the image in the top right, there are actually 3 little kittens there in a den when they're very young, and they're hard to see, and that's good. So they have these spots. They also have these beautiful blue eyes when they're little. You can see the kitty on the left that's got these great blue eyes. But as panthers grow and age, the spots fade, and then those blue eyes change to like a yellowish green color. So we've talked about panthers, and that's what we call them here. For right now, I'll call them pumas, since that's their technical name. But if someone says the word panther, it could mean a bunch of different cats. And hopefully that slide has popped up and you can see, depending on where you are in the world, if you say the word panther, it could mean something different than maybe what you're thinking of. So if we're in the Americas and someone says panther, it could be a puma, or they could be talking about the jaguar, because the jaguar's scientific name is Panthera onca. So there's some confusion there in that terminology. And jaguars typically have that spot in spot coloration with the tan and the black, but they also have a black or melanistic phase. So they, as in the top right, you can see that jaguar, about 10% of their population or so has that coloration. So if you are, say, in Africa or Asia and someone says panther, then they're going to be talking about the leopard, which is Panthera pardus is its scientific name. And you can see in the bottom left our common, more common coloration of the leopard with spots. But the leopard species also does have a black or melanistic phase. So you can see on the right, the bottom right is a leopard sitting in a tree. And it's also a smaller portion of their population that come in that dark coloration. Our pumas, our panthers do not have that genetic marker to allow for that coloration difference. So our panthers have never been documented to have that coloration. If you see a picture that says Black Panther, they're going to be either talking about a jaguar or a leopard. And then also, you know, because the common names can be so confusing, you know, we have these, you know, great displays. You know, King T'Challa would have been a black or melanistic leopard. So for, you know, for those superhero enthusiasts and our younger populations, it's helpful to kind of make that differentiation for them, so they can understand the different types of cats that are kind of depicted from around the world. So this next slide, I think, is really helpful in understanding, you know, y'all have a unique position in interacting with people a lot of times that have probably never been to Florida, or they don't know anything about Florida, and they likely don't have panthers or pumas where they're coming from. So this can help them understand the size difference of the cats that we're talking about. So on the left, we have our panther, puma, and notice how that tail kind of makes a little curve there. That's usually how they're going to be walking. Then in the middle, we have our other native cat, the bobcat, that has a short tail, but depending on what you're seeing, it could look kind of long. A lot of times people think bobcats have a tiny little nub of a tail, and that's not necessarily the case. I think their tails can be up to like 6 inches long, which can seem to someone that's not familiar very long. And then, of course, on the right, we have our domestic house cat, and those are most commonly confused with panthers. But I want you to note how that cat carries its tail. Our house cats typically carry their tails up, whereas panthers don't walk with their tail up like that. So that can be something to help you identify the animal correctly. This next slide is a PDF. You can get this on our website if you wanted to reference this at a future date, but it helps compare our 2 native cats. And from the images, they look like they're going to be the same size, but I want to draw your eyes to the right part of the screen where they have the yellow and orange silhouettes. That can also help understand, because of this picture, they look like they could be the same size. but that silhouette helps put in perspective how much smaller a bobcat is than a panther. And bobcats are quite small, 20 to 30 pounds only. And earlier we talked about how panthers have a tiny bit of black on them, the back of their ears being one of those places, while the bobcat has these big white spots on the back of their black ears. And that can kind of easily be seen even from the side, especially from the back. But if you're not seeing an animal for a very long time, which usually you don't, that can be something to look for to help identify the animal correctly. So pumas are an American cat. Pumas live throughout the Western Hemisphere, so southern Alaska all the way to the southern part of South America. And they used to range all over the lower 48 states. So here in Florida, Virginia, New York State, all of these areas had pumas at one point in time. But humans have taken away their habitat and also killed them. You know, there was a big campaign when Europeans had come to America to get rid of predators. So pumas, wolves, bears, you name it, they were probably on the list. So we have taken out almost all of the cats in the eastern part of their range here in North America. You can see on the image on the right that here in Florida, we have this tiny little population that's still holding on in the eastern part of their range. So that's important to hopefully help the species recover in an area where they, were gotten rid of. And another important thing I want you to look at here is how isolated our population is from any other population of pumas. So in the image on the right, we've got our tiny little population in Florida, and then there's a big vast area where there's nothing, there's no pumas until you get to over into Texas. And that's important because that leaves them isolated, so they can't share new genetic material. So these animals need a lot of space to live. Males around 200 square miles, females around 80 square miles. And this is some older GPS data of what home ranges might look like for a male and a female panther. I just want to slow down a little bit, make sure my slides are catching up with my talking. So these animals are currently listed as endangered. You could hunt and kill as many of these cats as you wanted to until 1950. And at that point in time, they were given the declaration of a game species here in Florida. So there was a season for hunting them and a bag limit for hunting them. They continued to increase their protections until 1973, when the Endangered Species Act came to fruition, and the panthers were automatically put on that list. So just the cats here in Florida, not cats out west. So like I said, these cats are currently listed as federally endangered. The state defers to the federal declaration because it is the most conservative. If that were to change, then we would reference the state protection of these animals. They are geographically isolated, like we had just talked about. They don't have that ability to share genetic material. Think of inbreeding in the human sense. Having a small population is not healthy. So as of 2015, we did a minimum count, and their population, so we assume there's 120 as a minimum number of cats in the area. And based on some other data collected and information we have, we believe the population is 120 to 230 adults and subadults. So it's a very small number. It has come up quite a bit from the 20 to 30 in the 80s and 90s, but that population is still quite small. So what is impacting the panther? The number one thing is habitat loss. And I know this isn't the message that our realtors want to hear, but it's important for you to understand this aspect of their life is, you know, that bigger image on the top right there, you know, the continued development of our area is taking away from habitat for our native plants and animals. And that's really the number one thing for panthers because they need such a large area to live on. Other impacts are illegal killing, inbreeding, like we've kind of talked about. That's what that heart image is for. As most of you probably know, inbreeding leads to poor body condition. And the cats that were living here in the 70s, 80s, and 90s had a really poor body condition because of that inbreeding. There's also diseases. So diseases from our pets, like our domestic house cats, can be deadly to panthers. Also vehicles, you know, we hear this on the news all the time that another one has been struck. So that's a concern. And then FLM. So this is something you may or may not have seen. It's a newer disease that we've learned about that is causing these cats to have this hind limb impairment and sort of off gait of their walk. And we're still doing studies and investigation to try to figure out what that is and what exactly is causing it. So this is from the Florida Wildlife Corridor, and this is kind of a really great example of what our wildlife is dealing with. So we're leaving just a little bit of green space for them, but then like in this photograph, it's bisected by a road. So if we don't put and plan for wildlife underpasses or overpasses, then, you know, that's kind of like a death highway for our wildlife. So that's something that we need to consider going in the future is if we're going to continue to develop, how can we do it sustainably? And what can we do to mitigate some of these issues like an underpass? So, you know, panthers don't understand roadways. They get hit all the time. And, you know, I don't think that's going to change, especially with the increasing population. But, you know, if we can support these underpasses and overpasses and fencing, that can really mitigate that issue, which, yes, it's good for the panthers. But if any of you have ever hit an animal with your car, it is terrifying. It can be deadly to humans. So, it can also cause a multi-car crash. So that's definitely something that we want to try to avoid if at all possible. So here's a kind of a beginning image of wildlife crossings that were discussed when Alligator Alley or I-75 was created, and they've been hugely successful in that area. So here on the left, image, we've got an Alligator Alley crossing, a really large one, specifically for many types of wildlife. Might as well let the whole town know about the combo code for that lot. Oh, okay. And then on the right, we are learning through these remote cameras that panthers and other wildlife are using these crossings that were not necessarily designed for them. So we're learning we don't have to spend so much money to make these massive crossings, that a lot of wildlife will use something much smaller that's affordable, much more affordable. So our recovery efforts, you know, this population was in the 20s and 30s, in the 70s, 80s, and 90s. So it was going to go extinct by our current time if we did not do anything. So we did something called genetic restoration. And what we did was we got cats from Texas, females, we put a collar on them. We brought a few of them over to Florida and put them out in the wild, and they bred with our local males and had offspring. And that genetic diversity is what has helped the population survive. Now, like I said, Texas cats are no different than Florida panthers. And if you think back to that map of the US, they would have always been breeding those subspecies of cats. So we also do things like habitat preservation, so mitigation for developing lands. That's very helpful for keeping those corridors open for wildlife. Conservation easements, and then down here, in South Florida, we're really lucky to have a lot of public land. And then, as we've discussed, underpasses have been hugely successful in reducing wildlife loss over major roadways. So anywhere that wildlife and humans exist, which is pretty much everywhere, there's an opportunity for interaction between, animals and humans. And specifically with predators or very large animals. So there's a multi-agency plan that we are a part of to respond to that potential for human-panther interactions and conflict. So we've kind of lined out what do we do in all of these situations if there's an interaction between humans and panthers. So the plan has 3 parts. We've got our human-panther interaction, and in that, there are 5 ways we have defined for humans to interact with panthers. So a sighting, very low risk, like this man in the photo, the panther's on the trail, they take a picture, and the panther walks off the trail. There's no risk there. The panther's going about their life. The human is, walking on a trail. There's an encounter. So that's a sort of a direct, an unexpected direct meeting. You may have seen a video of someone that was on the boardwalk at Corkscrew Swamp Sanctuary, and a panther came running down the boardwalk trying to get away, and they had to pass this person in order to get away. That cat didn't want anything to do with that human. It was just trying to get away. But that was an unexpected direct meeting. So that's an encounter. Now, an incident, this is where our risk level increases a little bit. This is where the behavior of the cat is important to pay attention to, and what you do in response is important. A threat, this is where, so an incident, there's like potentially threatening behavior, potentially, it's not outright. Now, a threat, there is behavior there. They're saying, hey, they are trying to give you a warning sign. They're hissing or growling. They are trying to tell you to get away. And then attack, obviously, that's the most risky situation. And that's where there is, conflict, direct interactions. So the second part of the plan is depredations, and that's where a panther kills a domestic pet or animal or livestock. And then outreach. So my position is outlined in this plan. Is it always a panther? So if there's an interaction between either pets or livestock or humans, it's not always a panther, because Florida, as a lot of people don't know, is still a really wild place. We have domestic dogs, which can be very naughty. No one wants to believe their pup did something bad, but domestic dogs can do a lot of damage. We have coyotes here. We've got bears, bobcats, raccoons, possums, hawks, owls. And then we have a whole slew of these non-native invasive animals like pythons, like tegus, and those can kind of cause problems, especially with smaller pets. So in this next slide, something that, a homeowner can look for is tracks. They may or may not see a panther or any other animal on their property, but they might find tracks. Being able to accurately identify them is helpful. And we've got some information on our website for them to do so. But one note I wanted to say is, panthers need a huge home range. So if a new homeowner or someone sees a panther on their property, that panther is not staying on their property. That panther is likely just moving through on its way to somewhere. So it's not something, no one's owning enough land to have a panther be living on that land. But they certainly may visit or cross over their land or stop and rest on their land or nearby. And leaving tracks is something really helpful. So on the top, we've got panther tracks. the bottom right, we've got a dog track, and then the bottom left, we've got a coyote track. And they're often, all of these are often confused with each other, but FWC is here to help people identify those tracks that they're seeing. So if you are helping someone maybe like me that's interested in, I want to buy a house with land and I want to have livestock, that's, they're kind of in a bit of a, I don't want to say high risk, but they need to kind of be educated on how to live in a rural place in Florida and how to keep their animals safe. So there is some assistance programs. They need to keep their livestock safe, and Defenders of Wildlife will help set up a pen. They'll split the cost with the livestock owner to get this pen set up. If it's a landowner that has already lost, say, a goat to a panther depredation, then the Conservancy, Defenders of Wildlife, and the homeowner can split the cost 3 ways to get a pen up to make sure that their livestock is protected. That's a really crucial aspect of our newer homeowners living in a rural setting where maybe they want to have chickens or they want to have goats or something like that. They've got to make sure that they know to keep their animals safe, which I really think most people moving here have no idea that we've got panthers, that we've got bears, that we've got coyotes, pythons, all these things that that they don't necessarily pose a threat because people all over the world are living with wildlife. People all over the Americas are living with panthers. They just need to understand kind of very simple ways that they can share the landscape in a safe manner. So here's some important stuff, and I'm just about done to wrap all this up, but this is some of the stuff that I want y'all to really pay attention to. So ways to minimize interactions. Panthers are active at dusk, from dusk till dawn. So when the light is low, when it's really nice in the morning to go for a walk or in the evening, that's when they're going to start moving around, especially this time of year because it's miserable during the day. So at night and in those times, it's really important to be aware. Don't wear your headphones when you go for a walk or a run. Pay attention to what your surroundings are. If you have a dog with you, have it on a leash, have it very close by, and just pay attention because our pets and livestock can really look and act a lot like panther prey, like deer and raccoons and things. So keep the panther prey away. So this is sort of a landscaping concern here. If you're bringing in wildlife, if people are feeding deer or they've got things on their property that are bringing in raccoons and stuff like that, then predators are going to follow them. So in that sense, you want to make sure that things are kind of tidied up in that sense. There's no attractants for raccoons or anything. And then you don't necessarily need to plant, there's alternatives to plant. If deer really like this one thing, there's probably something different that they can plant that won't attract, Panther's main prey to their property. So keep pets and livestock secure. We had just kind of talked about this with the pen program. If you've got especially smaller livestock, goats, sheep, chickens, things like that, they have got to be protected or you're going to lose them to something. Landscaper safety. So this is not just a wildlife concern. This is also a wildfire concern. You don't want the homeowner to have a bunch of thick brush right up around the home. Animals can live there, can den there, can rest there. And then also it's going to pose a threat for fire season, which we're sort of in, maybe coming out of, I guess we'll see. Other deterrents, so motion lights, that's something I always recommend. That's really helpful. Hot wire, electric fencing can be helpful. Pens, it just kind of depends on if you're selling to someone in the city, not so much concern, but if you're working with more rural residents, then those are things that are going to be a little bit more important. And then when you go out, hike or bike with a friend. There's lots of critters out there. We've got snakes and scorpions and pythons and bears, oh my. There's also, some crazy human beings out there that can be dangerous. So when you go out, take a friend with you. Okay, so you've gone out for a hike somewhere and all of a sudden you see a panther on the trail ahead of you. What do? Do not run. Okay, everybody repeat after me. Do not run. When panthers are running, they are chasing their food, and we do not want to make that association with them. So you're going to stop. You're going to face the animal. You're not going to turn around and walk away. If you've got kids and pets with you, you want to have them up close. You want to get them up off the ground without crunching down, crouching down to pick them up, okay? I like to recommend to families to do something called a hiking sandwich. So there's an adult that goes first, then the kids are in the middle, and then there's an adult that brings up the rear. And that way the kids can explore nature in a safe way, but the parents are going to be kind of a protection there. So like I said, you don't want to turn your back to the predator. You don't want to give them the opportunity to get the jump on you. They're hunting alone, and they need that opportunity to kind of one-up you. So don't give them that. You want to give the animal space. So you see the animal, you've stopped, take a step back, okay? You're paying attention to your surroundings, so you know you can just take a step back. Maybe you kind of startled the cat and it jumps off the trail. No problem. They see you, you see it, you both just kind of want to do your own thing. You don't want to get smaller. You don't want to crouch down or bend over. If you're out with a friend, like I told you to go, you're going to get together and you're going to look bigger. You kind of want to scare that animal. You want to let it know that you're not to be messed with. So you're going to maybe open your jacket, take your backpack, put it up over your head. You can say loud, firm words to the cat. Hey, cat, get out of here. Shoo. You want to kind of be intimidating, and ideally they're most likely going to be like, okay, I'm out of here. And then lastly, if for some reason you have come across this rare instance where this cat is intent on getting after you, if it attacks you, you are going to fight back. Eyes, ears, nose, mouth, somewhere where you can actually inflict a wound or pain. They have thick fur. They don't have this delicate, soft skin like we do. So you need to go for one of those areas that's going to make a big impact on them. And then another thing I want to note before I move on is that just because there's a animal present, just because there's a panther there doesn't mean that there's a threat or a risk. They're out on the landscape living their lives, and sometimes we cross paths, and they're cats and they're naturally curious. They will sit, they'll watch people, they'll just kind of see what's going on. If they're a comfortable distance from you, that they don't feel threatened by your presence, then they may not just run off. It's not like when you come up on a deer and it gets spooked and its first instinct is to bolt. They're predators. They don't have that like fight or flight instinct. So it's just something to remember. Just because the animal is there doesn't mean that it's going to threaten you or that you're in danger. But it is important to pay attention to what's going on. So another thing that's really important for all those residents moving down here, driving is, obviously very dangerous because of all the humans and the phones and technology. But like I said, we have a lot of wildlife here. So it's important to go the speed limit, pay attention to the panther zones because they're there for a reason. So here's my last slide. Here's our website, myfwc.com/panther. You can submit photos there. If you have an issue, we have a wildlife hotline. And then for anybody that has a cat tag, thank you very much for supporting our research and management of Florida Panthers. So with that, I will say thank you, and I'll stop sharing, and hopefully there's some questions maybe.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Ashley. if you all have questions, feel free to unmute yourself, or you can put it in the chat and we can be able to get those questions answered.
Oh, and I will say one more thing, maybe while you're coming up with your question, that we have a bunch of brochures and literature that if, I know maybe everyone's not in the office right now, but I would be more than happy to pass these along. We've got bear brochures, panther brochures, alligators, you kind of name it. And we've got that literature that you can have available to pass on to residents that might have questions. Maybe someone is informed or does have a concern. We've got a bunch of information that we can make available to y'all to pass along if need be.
All right, excellent. So we do have one question here from Jill. She said, how many human encounters, attacks you are aware of?
So we have never documented a panther attacking a human in the state of Florida. And we want to keep it that way. So, events like this and y'all passing on the information you've learned today to our prospective residents, that can help keep that number at 0. We have had a few people claim that they were attacked. Like most recently, there was a turkey hunter who was out and said he was attacked by a panther. And after investigation, they took some samples from hair that they found on his person. They were able to identify that it was actually a bobcat that attacked him, which is more common. Bobcats tend to kind of jump in there without knowing exactly what's going on, where panthers are a little bit more calculated, I guess, if you will. They tend to assess their risk. They're going after larger prey. Deer and hogs can actually injure them in the process. So they're usually less likely to just go after something in that sense. So we have never had anyone attacked by a panther. We have had a few encounters and incidents where like someone was at their home and they saw a cat at the edge of their property. They kind of felt a little threatened by it. But the interaction, the person went inside, the interaction didn't go any further. So we are very lucky to have that number at 0, and hopefully through education, we can keep it that way.
Excellent. So can you put your contact information into the chat? We have someone asking for that. And then we have someone that asks, how do they get the information? I'm not sure what they mean by that. Maybe the information that you had spoke about for their office, or maybe perhaps the slides. If Christine can be able to clarify that, that'll be excellent.
I'll just say, so I know that the presentation is being recorded today. You've got my email, so I'm more than happy. Just shoot me an email if you need something specifically, and I can get that to you. And then I also have been in communication with Angela. If anyone requires or requests brochures or anything like that, then I can coordinate with her to drop them off at your office or something like that.
Okay, great. So yeah, she was mentioning the brochures. So would you like for her to just reach out to you personally, and then you can make the arrangements for brochure drop-off?
Yeah, absolutely. That's totally fine. And then again, Angela's also got my contact information, so I can get the stuff to her office, or we've got a couple of FWC offices in Fort Myers. So I think there's a variety of ways we can work it out, but you have my contact information, so we can do that through email.
All right, excellent. So thank you so much for that. I learned a lot. I'm not a real big cat lover, but I do take the kids hiking. And so just some of those nuggets of information for safety was very valuable to myself, and then also the assistance for those who are living in rural areas. That's actually very good too, that I really picked up. So thank you so much for that. And I'm sure many others have learned a lot more.
Thank you so much for having me.
Our pleasure. All right, so moving right along, we now have the Lee County Department of Community Development. The senior planner, Dirk Danley, is going to speak to us here to bring us more up to date. Dirk, are you available? Are you here?
Yeah, hi. This is Dirk Danley. I'm actually here with one of my coworkers. Her name's Elizabeth Workman. She is a senior environmental planner. Can you see my screen?
We can see your screen, yes.
Okay, great. So there's two of us in here, and we're going to break up the presentation a little bit just to keep it a little more lively. But it's a really exciting time to be in Lee County. I'm sure that you guys are all aware of just how much growth we're facing right now. And we just wanted to talk about it a little bit. So just to start out with, let's see. There we go. So I'm sure as you all are aware, this is Lee County. We, as staff from Lee County, only operate in the areas that are unincorporated. So anything that's grayed out on your map here, this doesn't include City of Cape Coral, Sanibel, Fort Myers Beach, Estero, City of Bonita Springs, and the City of Fort Myers. Everything else, though, we'll issue the permits for and the zonings and everything else. So that's kind of where we focus a lot of our energy. This is the current, it's a little out of date now because it's back from 2016, but our current populations here in Lee County, I think the last time I saw a number was actually closer to 750,000 people, most recently in 2020, but new census data is coming out and we'll be updating these maps here soon. I think the number is actually closer to 750,000. And then just specific to unincorporated Lee County, once you take out the municipalities, we're closer to about 350,000 people. And those numbers, particularly with the pandemic and everything that's taken place with the pandemic, there is just a lot of growth right now. And a lot of the county is fundamentally changing from where we started. I grew up here, so this is all very, very personal to me in terms of watching the county grow. But one of the cool tools that we have, and it's actually from economic development, it's not actually from our staff here in community development. I'll come back to this, but we have what's called a development activity map. And I have a link at the end of the slideshow and we can send it out to everybody as well. But it shows where development's taking place, and it's kind of a cool little interactive map just to see, where the hot spots are in the county. And I don't know if you can see it very well, but near the bottom, there's a highlighted area in blue. Everything around in that area is in the Alico corridor, and that's really where a lot of the growth, particularly when it comes to employment, is taking place. As you can see, there's not a lot of properties that are not under some type of development activity in that area. And so we're seeing a lot of focused energy there from different industries. And really what we've seen a lot of, and are increasingly seeing more of, are headquarters, like Fortune 500 companies, big companies, national companies that are knocking on the door of developing or their headquarters, or at least an extension of their headquarters in this area. And that's really just changing the scene out there. I don't know if anybody's driven an Alico, over the past 10 years, but it's fundamentally changed up till now, and it will change. It'll keep changing here for the next 10 years. I want to go back. I don't know if I can. The Lee County projections through 2045 put us over at 1 million people. My suspicion is with everything that's happened after the pandemic, we will be growing to 1 million people faster than what this last projection has. And it comes a lot riding on the fact that there's just a lot of development happening with different types of businesses moving in. When I grew up here, it was government, it was the school system, it was healthcare. But with this corporate influx into our area, the county is really maturing in its employment sector, and everything kind of grows on top of each other. So you add employment, then you add people, and you add employment, and you add people. So it's just a really exciting time. And like I said, I'll make sure to include this link in the chat, even so that you guys have that available for your review.
So my name is Elizabeth Workman. I'm an environmental senior planner here at the county. And this is what the Department of Community Development looks like. We have a planning section, we have a zoning section, development services, the building department, we have an infrastructure planning, and we have code enforcement. You never want to end up in the last bullet, but we work through the process of each one of these sections to build subdivisions, to build large industrial and what have you. For you all working in the field of real estate, it's important to know that when you're promoting a piece of property, especially if it's residential, to know, what that density is, or if you're promoting an industrial commercial park, what is the zoning on that? If there's a board-driven resolution that was passed that has a certain capacity for how much square feet you can put on that particular piece of land. So all these different sections play a role in the makeup of developing that land for you all to sell. So I'm just going to go through the part of living the dream. So we're going to head to a residential lot. Like, how do you know, you have people moving here that are trying to get out of the weather. They're sick of shoveling snow and they want to come down here because they experience Florida and they see themselves living here full time. So how do you promote a single family residential lot or subdivision? The first step in doing that is our comprehensive plan. It's called the LEA plan. That LEA plan is the overarching umbrella, as I like to say. It drives the density. It drives the future land use category map that provides the amount of density in different areas. I compare this to the video game, The Sims, where you're developing a community where you have certain industrial parks in certain areas, and then you have your residential further away from the industrial, and you want your density at hubs and you want your rural areas to be less dense. So that's what the LEA plan does. So it's important to know what your future land use category is. Once you establish that, we have a land development code. The land development code is what drives the bus. That is where the rubber meets the road, how you develop that site, what it looks like, the buffering, the open space, the architectural standards, the amount of parking that you need, or in a residential subdivision where the amenity centers are and things like that. So the LEA plan, as I talked about, it has future land use categories. These categories will drive the type, the density, and the intensity. So at our interstate hubs or at our core areas like off of Daniels or what have you, we have some higher intensity areas. The density is higher. When you get out towards Buckingham, the rural communities, you have less dense areas. They're also driven by our planning communities. We have different planning communities in the area with how the projected land uses are meant to be. Within that are community plans. So we have, for instance, the Caloosahatchee Shores has its own community plan. And with that community plan has certain requirements for how that community wants it to be developed, what the look is, what the feel is, more of a rural sense like in the Caloosahatchee or off of Bay Shore. This is the future land use category map. So when you call up to know the density on a particular piece of property, we're going to look at the future land use map to see where that property lands, because that's going to tell us the type of development and the amount of density that can go on that particular piece. So the future land use category drives, like within this slide, is the urban community. So that is a section of the policy 1.1.4 that describes what the urban community future land use category was meant to look like. What's the density in that? So it's important to know what that future land use category is. And then also what planning community and community plan this property is located in, because that can override what the density needs to be on that property, how many units per acre can go on that property. So the land development code, once you establish your density and where you're at in the future land use map, according to the LEAP plan, the land development code has the zoning classification. So you might be able to get 6 units per acre on a piece of property, but the zoning classification, whether it's RS1 or if it's in a residential plan development or if it's in a two-family conservation area, TFC2, drives how that is developed, the setbacks, if that use that you're wanting to put on that piece of property is allowed. So the LEAD plan might allow you all this density, but the zoning classification, the next umbrella, provides you what that looks like, what the use can be on that zoning classification, what the setbacks are from the street, from the side, from the rear, and the size of the lot. There's certain sizes that are associated with different zoning classifications. Once you get that established, then you run into the development services section, which has the infrastructure planning. So that's where the architectural comes in. That's where the parking requirements come in, the buffering, all the environmental aspects. And then once that infrastructure has been developed, your utilities and all the public services for that subdivision, that's when the building permit department comes in, because the actual residential structures come in through there. So the actual single family home or industrial building, all the vertical construction is associated with our building department, and that's in the chapter 6 of our land development code. And then if something goes awry, well, then you're in code enforcement. You never want to be in code enforcement, because then you have a problem and you're going to have mitigation that you have to do. So as long as you're following the land development code and the LEAD plan, you will never end up in the last bullet.
So our zoning districts are separated out into different categories, and they're listed out here: agricultural, residential, community facility, commercial, marine, industrial, and planned development. And so all of these sections in our land development code, if you go look for agricultural districts, it'll break out the different categories. It's really just agricultural 1, 2, and 3. It'll give you a set of uses that you're allowed to use on the property. And then, like Beth said, step backs, minimum lot size, and all those other items. The one that's a little bit different is the planned development. And Beth did touch on this a little bit. The planned developments are site-specific zoning. So chapter 34 hits all the other different zoning districts, but when you enter into a planned development, there is a governing resolution that basically describes how the property is going to be developed. There's a approved master concept plan that's basically a site plan for the entire development. It describes the uses that are permitted and the conditions of approval when somebody comes in to actually start developing that property. So whenever you are running into a property and you see something that ends in a PD, so an RPD, an IPD, an MPD, anything that PD, there's some type of governing resolution, and it's important to keep your hands on that while you're going through, any type of sale or anything else while you're trying to promote a property. This is just a couple references so you can see that we talked about that agricultural zoning district. This is briefly what we were looking at. So there's a table, and this is a little snippet from that table that shows what uses are permitted and the conditions that you need to comply with, and the cross-reference to other sections of code. So in this case, let's just talk about, I don't know if you can see it on your screens, but something that's permitted in an agricultural district is an accessory apartment. And so there are 2 different sections there on the special notes that basically tell you the conditions on how you can get an accessory apartment on your property. So you may be at a yes, but there may be other steps to make sure that you guys are able to develop that property with an accessory apartment. And then the property development regulations are basically establishing the minimum lot size, the width, the depth, and the setbacks.
So far we've gone over just the site and what is allowed on that site. And now we're living the dream. Part 2 is the actual vertical construction. So when you're ready to go vertical, you have our permitting department. So the permitting department issues the residential permits, the commercial permits. If you want to put a mobile home or recreational vehicle, it's the MRV permit. And these are all the different abbreviations for the type of permits and what they do. So before you break ground, you've got your density established if you're residential, or you've pulled the plan development resolution and you know your thresholds for that development, what can go there, and what the plan looks like. Now you're ready to go vertical with the actual buildings. So you'll apply for industrial commercial building permit is the COM. So if you ever see a COM and then 2021, that's the permit for the actual commercial structure. Residential, if you're more into selling for residential uses, you'll actually have your single family or your duplexes. You'll have a residential permit. It could be as much as a garage door, a duplex. You could do, a roof over, anything like that is the residential permit. And then of course the mobile homes is the park models, the mobile homes, the recreational vehicles. So those what those stand for in our system, if you ever run across that. The life of the permit. So you submit the permit. The folks you're selling to will submit a permit to the lobby. It will be reviewed by a regulatory review team and or development services, depending on what type of review it requires. Then the plan review team will look at it, and then it will be finalized for pickup, and then the work is conducted. In some instances, it may or may not need a vegetation removal permit to remove the vegetation on the land. Those go by thresholds and where the piece of property is located within Lee County. It also may need an Eagle review. I know some of you have gone through where you needed an Eagle review because the property was located in an Eagle zone, a bald eagle zone, which has certain requirements for work within the eagle nesting season. So we can talk about that on specific questions, but I know that affects a lot of the permits. It'll hold the permit up actually to go vertical. And then the work is verified in conjunction with the approved plan. So once the site is built, once the vertical construction is done, whether it be a commercial building or residential, there's verification by staff. So there's an inspection all throughout the building of the structure. There's electrical and foundation and roof inspection and what have you, plumbing. But then at the final is when the release happens and the applicant can actually move into the structure.
So one of the pieces of review that's really important to Lee County is we are a coastal community. And not only that, but we have a very large river that kind of bisects the county north and south. And there's a ton of other little creeks and very important little waterways that are just necessary for the habitat that we live in, but then also maintaining our drinking water and everything else. So most reviews are reviewed with flood. There's a national flood insurance program at the federal level that requires the county to review and maintain flood maps. And then when development comes in, we make sure that a building is built to the right elevation or has some type of flood mitigating measures so that there's not a catastrophic failure to the building should there be, a flood event. And really, where we are, the big flooding events are usually hurricanes, storm surge, or just a lot of rain. Depending on where you are in the eastern parts of the county, rain events in their own right can flood out properties, and we see that relatively often. But generally speaking, it's the storm surge that the county has the biggest worry about. The interesting thing is those maps are always changing. The last big event we had was Hurricane Irma. That's when our flood maps most recently changed. At least that's what I recall. Where areas that were in flood zones are no longer in flood zones, and places that were not in flood zones before, the new slosh maps showed that is actually in a flood zone. And so, it can be a little bit of a moving target on a property of whether or not they're in a flood zone and if they need to get flood insurance, or if it's just an optional option. But when it gets to be a little bit more interesting is where you're coming in, somebody say they have a commercial property and they have interest in improving the building, and say they're doing a lot of work and it ends up being up to 50% of the value of the building, then flood improvements are required if they're in some type of flood zone. You know, particularly when we get near the river, a lot of those older buildings either have to come down and be built at a new elevation, or they need some type of flood proofing measures to the building. So that's just something to keep in mind. Let's see. And, you know, for any other information when you're going through a property, if you're worried about it or you have any thought that this may be in a flood zone, you can always reach out to the leagueup.com/DCD flood, and we'll be able to help you with the right resources to make those decisions.
So this next slide is just kind of a recap. So for you all, you have a client and they're interested in purchasing a property, and you want to make sure that what their use is or what their livelihood is, or maybe it's just to build a single family home, that you're in the right planning area with that future land use category. That's that first umbrella. That's the first door to unlock. Once you get through that, the next step is to see what that zoning classification is on that property. Each property in the county has a certain zoning classification, and Dirk kind of went over that. It could be what we call conventional. So it could be your RS1, your C1, commercial C1, RS1's residential, or it could have a planned development. So once you determine that, then you know how to market that piece of property or to help your client find what they're looking for. Those are the two big doors to go through. Once you get through those two and you land on a piece of property, really from there, it's, you know, what can you build on that? What is it going to look like? What's the square feet you can get on an industrial? And that's all part of the chapter 34 that Dirk kind of went over with the conventional zonings. Or if you're in a planned development, that planned development is basically the prescription for development on that land. And then once you're ready to go vertical, then you have the building department. Infrastructure planning will look at the roadways and the traffic and also your utilities and anything to support that development. And then if something goes awry, then we have code enforcement. So now we're on to part 3. We're rolling through our dream here. And the next slide is subdividing lots. We get a lot of folks coming in who want to take a piece of property and they want to slice and dice it to do different things. When you're in a planned development, that planned development is the overarching, like I said, prescription for that 5,000 acre piece of property. So if you want to start switching up ownership, then we get into how the infrastructure needs to support the whole, even though you're slicing your piece of pie. With the residential subdivisions, we really got to watch out to make sure that the minimum lot size is met for that zoning classification. In the multiple family areas, we just need to make sure that, again, the minimum lot size, or if you're in a planned development, the overarching planned development is still being met through those conditions. Also with the infrastructure planning, they look at the bicycle and pedestrian programs because we have, you know, a lot of passive rec going on in the county. Some people would rather bike and walk than drive. So we try to get the infrastructure there so folks can, you know, easily access these areas. And then, of course, transportation development to support the uses. We need to have roads that lead to some of these uses, and we need to make sure that the roads have the infrastructure. They can support the amount of traffic that are on these roads through that. The Department of Community Development offers something free. Nothing's free in life, but Department of Community Development offers informals. So every Thursday, there are these things called informals. And what they are is a half-hour session to meet with staff in each, like the different departments that we've talked about thus far. There's a member from each one of those departments present to listen to what the customer wants to do with a piece of property. They've done the research beforehand to give the best information they can in the informals, and to help folks understand what we do here. Because if you don't work in it every day, it sounds like a foreign language. So this is offered to people who are interested in purchasing land. It's offered to realtors. Anybody can come in, anybody. And we will research the property and then offer that information. Like I said, it's free. It's a half hour, and you can make the appointments for this from the website below. And that's at theleagueof.com/DCD/DS/PRE. They are non-binding, but we try to give the best information. And if we don't have an exact answer for you, we will take your information and research it and get back to you. And it's a wonderful resource to skip submitting something that then just gets rejected. And then, you're back at square one. Okay, code enforcement. Nobody wants to end up in code enforcement, but here are the typical things that we see for code enforcement. And it's your basic property kind of was let go. So you have lot mowing. There could be trash. People are dumping trash on other people's property. Unlicensed vehicles, building without a permit. We see this sometimes where people jumpstart the process and start going vertical or start clearing land without the proper permits. Signs that obstruct the roadway, and then the zoning violations and what have you. Environmentally, I work in environmental zoning, so I do the reviews for the environmental rezonings of property, but I get involved in the environmental violations when it comes to the non-compliant in landscaping and the tree protection. Sea turtles have specific lights that need to go on there for shielding of the beach. And then we talked a little bit about zoning conditions. Sometimes folks will start developing land and not follow zoning conditions, or if there's preserves on the site that need to be preserved for like the Panther mitigation that the previous person was talking about from FWC, and they impact the preserve, there's mitigation that needs to go on with that. So we get involved with that a lot of the times.
So I guess just to recap a couple different pieces. Right now we're in a very busy time, and I know that probably anybody working in the real estate industry, time is really important, particularly as fast moving as properties are for sale right now. Just to bounce back for a second to the informal pre-application process, that saves a lot of time. When somebody goes to buy a property and they think they want to buy it, so they go into contract and then they're in their due diligence. Sometimes there's just not enough time to get all the things figured out about whether or not they can actually do what they want to do. And those informal pre-application meetings are really a great resource to make sure that property works for them for what they're trying to do. In the off chance that property is not ready for them to do what they're trying to do, we have a hearing examiner process to work through entitlement issues on a property. This is if, say, it's the wrong zoning district, say some of the uses, for instance, just to throw one out there, cell phone towers require public hearings generally just to get the approval process. And we do all that. There's a certain set of processes. It's the rezonings, the plan development rezonings, special exceptions and variances. And those all go to the hearing examiner or through the hearing examiner process. We generally require a site plan and some analysis done by an applicant team. And that goes back and forth between staff and the applicant. So staff finds that we have enough information to, provide a full analysis and then be able to make a recommendation to the hearing examiner. And then we take it to public hearing, and people are notified surrounding the property, and they have a chance to speak their concerns or their support of a project. And it's one of the more involved processes that we get in here at Lee County. A lot of those processes do take time. The special exception and variance process, I believe we're saying take about six to 8 months to get through, simply because it's really a lot of that back and forth on the front end that ends up taking the time, making sure that we have a complete application. So there is time to be saved. But then once we find something sufficient, it takes to get all the advertising correct and everything. It takes about 2 months to get scheduled for the hearing examiner. And then in some instances, for instance, rezonings, they have to go to the Board of County Commissioner for final approval. So the hearing examiner is kind of the mid-step, and those processes take about a year. So that's the rezonings and plan development rezonings. I would just assume it'll take about a year to get to an entitlement that you guys are looking for. And what we're seeing a lot of right now is people upvaluing their property. They're going through rezonings on speculation so that it's more move-in ready for the next tenant. I brought up that Alico corridor. I personally have 2 or 3 projects where they're just doubling the entitlement, that they don't have an end user in mind. They're not changing the site layout. They're just doubling it. And so it's people are working on the front end to make sure that they're ready for somebody to come, buy a piece of property, develop it. But every once in a while, we have to go through that process. And we're always more than willing to help when we get there to make it go as seamless as possible and be as helpful as possible. But it does take some time. So let's say you finally get the land use category that you guys or that your client is looking for, you get the zoning right, you subdivide your land, you build your house, you finally made it. And as things move forward, there's always just the opportunity to come ask county staff while you're going through each of those steps, or get to the end of it and say you want to do the next project, or your client wants to do the next project. We try to be as helpful as possible. Customer service is very important to us, and so whatever way we can help, we will try, and we will definitely be able to give you the resources to help the project move forward in whatever way possible. We do have some helpful resources here. Where we operate mostly is in that leagov.com/DCD. These are a couple of other places to help with your review of a project. And that last one, that leecountybusiness.com, that's where that interactive map was. I'll type it into the chat and you can look it around. That's the economic development website for Lee County. We have a really close working relationship particularly the past couple of years. It's grown to where economic development is really an advocate between county staff and the development community. They advocate both directions, and they've just been a really great resource in improving what resources are available for both ends. So I really do recommend just checking out that website, dig around, see what there is to see. If you have any questions, you can always reach out to us and we can try to give you the resources that you need to get to whatever you're looking for in terms of an answer.
I just want to add one thing. That second website that ends with Lee Spins, that's our aerial resource. It has layers associated with it. There's an environmental layer that will show you where the eagle nests are in the area, because I just want to hit on this because personally, when I'm answering the phone and getting questions from folks, it's mostly about if they're in a zone, if they're in a wetland zone, if they're in an area where there is an eagle, because that limits them the amount of time for construction. And I get a lot of that from realtors asking about property. So that has a layer system on it, and an environmental layer that will pop up the actual zones of where the eagles are. Also, the parcel query associated with that will give you if you have wetland soils or not. But if in doubt, you can always email or call us and we can go ahead and give you the information to the best that we can.
And just to piggyback on that, if there's any part of the whole process that you end up having a question, really do feel free to contact us. Our lobbies are open now. If you feel like you need an answer today, you can walk in. We can work to get you the answers that you're looking for. It's just a busy time, and we're here to help in whatever way we can. We have a pod call, line that we can call, and that's that. I'll go to the next slide. That 239-533-8585. That kind of gets you to the front of community development, and they'll be able to direct your call if you have anything that is pressing that you want to have an answer for, or you need an answer for. But like I said, we're also just open, so you can come in and have a discussion with us in person as well. To get a more comprehensive answer, Beth did talk about that informal process. We really do recommend those as well. Those are through Zoom still. So if you have clients that are out of town that are trying to make these decisions, we work great for that. I don't know when we'll go to in-person pre-application meetings, but for right now we're working through Zoom. So that, we're here to help in whatever way we can or provide the resources you need. I think that's it.
That is all. If you have questions, go for it.
All right. Thank you so much. I know we had a couple in the chat, and let's see
Where can
here.
we find these tables? Let me see if I can send that link real quick. Need to jump out of my screen sharing. I will just send a link to our mini code. It's pretty searchable, so you can definitely use that. Let's see.
Now let me ask you, Dirk, that link you're about to send, we have a question in regards to where they can find the, I guess the tables charts that you showed.
Yeah, those are in there. Okay. Let's see. I want to see if I can share my screen again. I can actually walk you through it.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah, because the tables marry up to the zoning district that you're in. So it's quite lengthy, but once you're in it and you start reading it, if you know what zoning category you're in, if you want to.
So this is, don't make fun of all my tabs, but this is our land development code. It's the electronic version. If you go to chapter 34 and then into district regulations, we broke them up in the presentation. It's very similar to how it is in the land development code. So if you go to agricultural districts, we'll be able to discuss the 3 different agricultural districts. I'll probably use that since that's what's on the slideshow. But every time you open up one of these districts, so if you did residential, it's all crafted the same way. But in this case, it's 34-653 is the use regulations table, and then 654 is the property development regulations table. So the use regulations, the 653, this is what pulls up. It's interactive. You can expand it to where the district stays on top there, and you can scroll through and do your research that way. And each of those special notes that I kind of talked about before, the cross references to other sections, those are all hyperlinked. So if you click on it, you will get the information that's required. So I don't know if that helps answer that question, but the link is in the table there, or in the chat. But I'm going to go through one more just so you know. So commercial, there's a lot of commercial zoning districts. They're all, we didn't create the different zoning districts for commercial, but there are a lot of them, and we have to, enforce them. So when you see all those different numbers, the C1s, the C1A, C2, C2A, yada, 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 every one of those have a different set of permitted uses. And so, if you expand that table here, you can search for each of those things. So say, you're trying to look for an assisted living facility. These are the only zoning districts that permit an assisted living facility. I mean, obviously there are residential districts that also allow for those. I believe multifamily allows for that, and I believe community facilities does as well. But that's neither here nor there. The important thing is this shows you each zoning district that allows the use that you guys are trying to develop, or your client is trying to develop.
And if you don't know what the piece of property that you have is zoned, you can always go to that lease things map, and there's layers associated with that. And you can click on the zoning classification, and it'll pop all the zoning classifications up on an aerial. And then you'll know what your zoning classification is to look up and cross-reference in these charts. And then it just kind of snowballs from there, like going through the whole thing. I would mess around with it because it's very interactive to expand that and look at it. I don't know if that answers the question fully. There's additional questions.
No, actually, I do believe that does answer their question. And then also even more so of just showing the different categories, especially for commercial, for those who are looking to get into commercial or just kind of want to dabble and explore and learn. So I think that was very useful, and I do believe that does answer their question. We do have someone stating that they went to Respin site and they got a message that indicated that they were denied. So they want to know, how can they sign up for access?
Let's see if I can find another way.
It's a trap.
Yeah,
You fell into our trap.
yeah, so every once in a while, here, let's see if this will work. We updated from Leespin's 2.0 to Leespin's 3.0, and the hyperlink's the same, but every once in a while you just gotta do a different hyperlink. So I don't have a good answer for it, but it's a little finicky. And here's an updated link, and that one should update for you.
If all else fails, if you go to the leagov.com website and go to the GIS department, there's an interactive map icon, and you can click on that and you can get to the Leespin's map that way. It's kind of a roundabout way to doing it besides of a link. But if you ever have any problems, just contact one of us and we will hook you up with that, because that is a really good resource for you all.
All right, so is there any more questions that you would like to ask? Ask why they are here, get it firsthand, put it in the chat, and I can ask the question for you. We'll give it about another 30 seconds if we don't hear anything. All right then. So not hearing anything other than thank you, both of you, so much for that valuable information, giving us some more tips and tricks on how to navigate and become an expert to Lee County. I know that this is definitely one of the masterpieces to putting together our presentation to our buyers and to our sellers. So thank you so much for that. All right, so moving right along, we are now at our last speaker before our lunch, and that is Lee County Sheriff Office Business Crime and Prevention Specialist, Kim Swanson.
Hello.
Hello there.
How is everyone?
We're excellent. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you. Am I good to share screen?
You are good to share.
All right. Let's see if we can do this. There we go. Now, let me go here. All right. Can everybody see that okay? Everybody doing good? The colleagues in front of me that just finished with their great presentation was talking about living the dream. And many new residents that are wanting to have their own house, or they're wanting to buy another one and it's their dream, sometimes run into a nightmare. They start living the nightmare because a criminal comes through and steals stuff that delays the process or maybe makes it start all over. I've been with the sheriff's office 26 years and I was a deputy. And I remember back in the day when I was working in Lehigh as a deputy, 2004, 5, 6, somewhere around in there, There was a big housing boom, and we were getting a lot of appliances stolen and things like that. And now moving forward with COVID and things being put on hold, now all of a sudden we are having a big spurt of development and houses and commercial. And with it, criminals look for opportunities. So we're going to talk today about the construction special investigations, which our sheriff, Carmine Mercino, started as a response to that, as well as to partner with our building industry. I put on the front slide our detective, Ozzy. He has a lot of experience with the heavy equipment theft, construction theft, and other types of crimes. And then my information too. So you're welcome to get that information if you need to contact either of us. We do presentations similar to what you're going to see today about what's happening in construction sites and how you as a realtor can assist us. We work together as partners. We can't do it all our own selves at the sheriff's office. So we need the partnerships of the community. So we'll have the workers that are on site, the contractors, they need to do their part. We also need our community partners, such as you, to do your part. So if you're showing a house or going through a development, what do you see that might be suspicious or might be out of the ordinary? Do you just ignore it, or would you involve us or the contractor to say, hey, I saw this, or this is what I'm just going to check on? So our construction special investigations unit then gets involved. Ozzy gets called out whenever there's a construction theft or a heavy equipment theft going on. And I'm going to show you some of our arrests today so that you can see some of our special things that's gone on. Construction is one of the most targeted industries. Many reasons for that. There's a lot of things that are risks, unsecured locations, equipment just sitting out by the side of the road or in an empty lot. Many of the heavy equipment started by just a single key. So one key fits all type of a thing. Many of them are not inventoried, so we don't have any idea whose it belongs to. For instance, right now there's a big push to get plywood because it's so expensive, and it is back ordered. So we are having plywood thefts. Well, how hard is it to identify, is this my plywood or is that somebody else's plywood? So one of the things that we are wanting our partners to help with is securing things, tracking things, labeling things. The criminals that attack or really go after the constructions there are three different categories for the most part. We have the amateur ones that maybe drive by, they're wanting some money and they see tools lying there or an unsecured lot, and so they go in to walk around and see what they can find. Then we have the insiders, which are employees. It could be, we've had many times where it's contractors or employees from another site, another company that's waiting for plywood. And so they go to another company's site and steals the plywood to use on their site. And then we have the professional thieves. They might be a crew and they're going from place to place, casing developments that are being developed where they have houses that are in different processes. But the one mostly that we see is the insiders. Employees, rival contractors, those that are in the industry, those are what we're seeing most as criminals. So the four things that we always try to talk about, whether it's a construction site, whether it's a residence, whether it's a house of worship, whatever it is, would be the 4 Ds. We're first trying to deter the crime. That means that someone going by looks at it and says, I'm going to go somewhere else. There are things that it's going to make it hard. I'm going to be discovered because there's cameras. So I'm going to go somewhere else. So we want to deter them first from even coming there. And then detect. So how could we detect that there's a criminal there? That would be from someone watching and seeing someone drive up. That could be through cameras that alert you, hey, someone's there. It could be from an alarm going off. but anything to detect that a crime is in progress or beginning so that we can get there to make an arrest, to stop it. Anything to delay it. The fence, they have to get through a fence, a lock, a strong lock. They have to figure out how to get the lock undone or a combination. Not having equipment inside until it has to be, not leaving it sitting there for weeks and weeks. Lights may delay it. And then denying access would be similar: fencing, strong locks, maybe have a guard or a deputy on a detail city patrolling around, a dog, whatever it might be. So let's look at one case that we had. This was in 2019, and we had several various ones that were similar to this. Over the weekend during the summer. Now what's coming up? Summer, right? We usually see an uptick in car burglaries, unlock cars because kids are out of school, but many times criminals will go and target our construction sites because over the weekend, many times they're not working, or during the summer, it may be rain, maybe something that'll keep them from not anybody being there. So in this case, there were 2 houses under construction, and they entered through the rear sliding glass door. That's another area we find very frequently. When the rear sliding glass doors get on, those are very weak points. They can be targeted. So we found that one was forced open by prying and locking the mechanism out of the frame, and the other was unlocked. So we think it was probably just left unlocked by a subcontractor or a realtor that was going through. The interior door from the garage to the main house had no handle or lock on it. So it was very easy just to push in and go in. So the front door required a code. They had a code on it. But unfortunately, it's the same code for all the residents in that same companies that were under construction. So it's just like a key. If you get a hold of the code, or another employee or contractor gives you the code, now you got the code for all the different houses under construction for that same company. In this case, and in many of the cases, all the appliances were stolen. The appliances were put in there, or they were sitting in boxes. Sometimes it's cabinets sitting in boxes. Sometimes it's other things, but they were all stolen. There was a camera, but unfortunately it was not working because there's a dead battery. So one of the things is, if you're going to have cameras, which is great, or lights, fence, make sure they're maintained, that they're in good condition. So you should have somebody that's a crime prevention person in your staff that looks around and make sure that these things are happening, things are locked.
Hi, I'm Public Information Officer Jesse Santero. Sheriff Carmine Marcino just implemented a brand new construction special investigations initiative, and we are going to give you an inside look.
A detective assigned to the CSI will focus solely on construction-related crimes. While detectives in districts handle their caseloads, the CSI detective will work directly with the construction industry experts during criminal investigations. The detective will also act as a law enforcement contact on construction builder boards. He will inform the board members about the kind of crimes happening and then form a plan to prevent them.
Nobody wants to enter into a high crime part of the state, high crime part of the county. So having law enforcement present, having that taking place on an ongoing basis is something that we are very thankful for here in Lee County.
By educating the construction industry, we can remove crimes of opportunity and keep them from happening. As your sheriff, the safety and security of the residents is my #1 priority. There is no problem too big or too small for our crew unit. See something, say something, make the call.
Okay, so we're going to look at a couple incidents that's been happening. This is in May of 2021. This was in Lehigh. We have had numerous water systems stolen. So that's one thing as realtors. If you go to an area and you're looking, or you're showing and there's a water system that's missing, find out, is this new? Is this an old? Has it already been reported? In this case, this 2 guys on the left here in this picture were captured on the camera, and they had pulled their pickup truck up and had used a hacksaw and was cutting off parts of the water system. And fortunately, we had tips from the community and a license plate reader. If you're not familiar with those are excellent to have on communities at their entrances to read the license plate. And they got tips from the community about this, and the license reader gave us the truck a mile from the theft site, and they were able to make an arrest. Now, what's funny, remember the video we just saw they were talking about, they showed that on the news when we put that out, and Ozzy was called to interview these two when they were caught on the site. And one of the guys said that, when he walked in, he says, I know who you are. I saw you on TV. I guess I better just tell you what all happened. And that was funny because that's one of the advantages of having social media. He recognized Ozzy right away and decided, oh, you got me. So that was one of the arrests that we made with that. So heavy equipment is very popular, and especially the skid steers and the mini excavators. We're third in the United States for heavy equipment thefts. And remember, we were talking about holiday weekends. That's a lot of times because they're parked and they're not secured properly. They're stolen because of the high payoff. Being caught is a less of a risk than the reward of selling it. So they'll try for that. And many times there's not any anti-theft measures. They don't have any VIN or serial numbers that are identified. So many times all we have is, well, it was a skid steer. It was this color. So making sure it's anchored down on site, it's secured. And if you're taking it from place to place, make sure it's locked down. And why that is important is if you see, because many times people will tell us, well, they look like they were workers. We just thought that they were workers removing or putting in appliances. If you see any equipment, heavy equipment being pulled on a trailer and they're not secured down, take note of that, because many of the criminals they just are in a hurry and they get them on the trailer and take off. So in this case, this is what happened in South District. This is March 3rd. This man here, Gilberto, he was wearing a construction shirt. Many of them will put on, looks like they're supposed to legitimately be there. He happened to have received that from somebody else that was in construction, and they gave him a shirt. He said when they interviewed him, no, I don't work in construction. He was just wearing the shirt. But they pulled him over because he had a skid steer and a front end loader on his trailer, but they were not tied down. And by law, you need to have them tied down if you're in transit. And also the tag was obscured. He had a black cover over it. When they arrested him, pulled him over, detained him, they found he had 80 plus keys for various heavy equipment and ignitions that he had taken out of various heavy equipment. So he was a professional. He'd been doing this. So one of the biggest things is GPSs, of course. We're able to track them. Are they over in Miami? Or are they 1 mile down the road like the one guy was with the LPR? We were able to see that. So having GPSs and having it on plywood many times, and I'm going to show you one of the arrests we made because of the GPS tracking that was on plywood. If they see that it's well secured, the thief, they will probably go to a different place because they don't want to go through all the process of trying to get in. They're going to find something softer, something that's less secure. Fencing, if you can put a temporary fence around it, I know a lot of these larger developments, it might not be easy to do that. But if you're on one lot and you have you're going to be parking your heavy equipment there, putting up a temporary fence, protecting your lumber. Right now, we're having a big surge in attractiveness for wanting to get plywood and lumber. So here's one in Cape Coral. 40 plywood sheets were stolen from a construction site in Cape Coral in April. And as you can see from this Crime Stoppers photo, loading them up in a truck. Now, if anybody's driving by, would you think it's just a construction worker? It's very easy to just think that. But just keep in mind, as you're working and going around into construction sites and communities being developed, Plywood is very attractive right now, and you might take a second look and find out. You're not bothering us if there is something you're not sure, you know, there's no name, there's nobody else around, calling us and letting us check out with him. If he's working for a contractor and he's supposed to be picking up that lumber, fine. But if he's not, we've caught somebody red-handed. We are putting up signs. You'll see these all over. We have the no trespassing signs. There's various kinds. We've got Crime Stopper tips number on there because we're getting lots of calls they want to be anonymous. So we're trying to get as many signs out as possible on a construction site. Lighting, criminals don't like to be seen. So if it's lit up well, that helps. Marking your items. As you can see, these different things, if you have some type of a spray paint mark, a sticker, something that's that you can't just peel off, you have some kind of a mark somewhere. If we get a criminal that has a bunch of windows or has doors and we can identify it, that's yours to get back to you. Then we don't have to try to figure out which construction site did we get this. So other tracking options are the GPS. These are others for like plywood, the radio frequency identification. And you can put, as you can see how little they are, you can put a sticker, you can put a little thing on your plywood, on your appliances. We've gotten things back because of that. Uh-oh. My thing froze. Is it moving your way? Hang on, let me see. There we go. Let's try it again. There we go. So cameras, that's a very important thing. And I'm going to show you some of the cases that we had because of security cameras. They're so inexpensive now, it pays to put cameras at least in front of a house, if it's just one house, back of a house, if it's a development, at the entrances of the streets, things like that. What you need is night vision, the 100% wire free, there's various kinds, but security cameras is something that you really should look into. This one just happened in May. It's a plywood burglary. You can see these are pictures from a camera on site. Deputies were notified by a contractor employee because he saw it, alerted his camera, and he was looking, he's like, what in the world, who are they? They were loading up plywood in their van. So the deputies got there and there they were. And of course they were trying to say, oh yeah, we're supposed to do this. But they were lying, of course. And when they looked in the van, they could see in plain sight, the plywood sitting right there. So the contractors came and said, nope, we don't know who these people are. They're taking our stuff. And they were arrested. Here's another one. This is a picture of this guy, Elvis's garage. Can you see? He's been very busy. One of the things that he was doing, we know of at least 6, but possibly 20 that construction sites that he has hit. This one was in March, and we were notified that kitchen appliances were removed from this business that was being under construction. They notified that there was a GPS tracker, thank God, on one of the appliances, so we were able to track it. They pinged it and they found that it was in Lehigh at this certain area, so they made contact with him at his residence, and they discovered all these water systems inside the garage. And they also located numerous other construction materials. So he had, when they did the search warrant, they had 22 water system tanks, 16 salt tanks, 27, as you can see the list. So he was very active in taking these things. Here's another one. This was in May. They arrived to a burglary of appliances in progress. Now there's a female standing out in front. Now she probably was going to try to, I'm a female, we're just, you know, I'm just here. She was trying to mislead the deputies that were checking out it. Meanwhile, while the deputies were talking to her, other deputies were arriving and doing a perimeter where they set up on the various streets around this residence in case somebody ran or a car took off, and a canine was one of them. So as soon as this man came out of the house, he sees the deputies and he takes off running. Well, the K-9 was able to apprehend him, and there were a bunch of different items of things that he had been taken out of the house, appliances and stuff like that. So for the last few minutes here, I'm going to just give you some tips of what things that you need to be aware of, and that you need to, that you can help us. Remember, the vacant properties are prime targets. So if it's a house under construction and there's no residents around, those are prime targets. They're going for appliances, copper piping, AC units, cabinets, ceiling fans, and any other items. And if you're going into this house under construction, it may be even in the stages of almost being closed on, or it could be halfway through. Sometimes they don't care. They just grab the gas stove and tear it out, or maybe the piping, and they don't even take the time to turn anything off. They just take it and go. So if you're entering, and before you start going right in, just do a perimeter check, look around, peer into the windows. Do you see anything that shows that maybe pipes have been broken, or something that would be a danger to you? As you can see on the picture here, this is an explosion in Texas where the thieves had removed a gas stove and it exploded. So looking for the broken windows, any cracked door frames, or maybe a rear slider partially open, tampered locks or pry marks that look like maybe someone's either tried to get in or did, lights that don't turn on or are broken. If you start smelling something like rotten eggs, natural gas odors, get away. Missing appliances, piping, AC, water systems. I remember in Lehigh when I was a deputy, somebody turned on the water. They had taken something and all the water was just filling up everywhere. So be careful, take a look before you go in when you're around construction sites. Don't enter the home if you think someone's been inside since you last visited. So call 911 if you smell those eggs, you see something, get away from the location. Don't go in. Leave it and wait for the emergency personnel to get there to check it out. These are some of the things that you might either suggest or look for: installing security alarms before they rehab a home, not after the end of it. Asking neighbors. There are a lot of developments where there's a house being under construction here, and next door there's neighbors that are already there. Asking them to keep an eye out. Hey, making sure that there's not a burglar that is trying to get. Paying attention to litter. That can give you an idea. Is there broken PC pipes? Is there anything that maybe a box that's been torn open that's not, most of the construction will put it in a dumpster or put it not just strewn around. Make sure that if you do have appliance boxes, if they do, don't let it sit out in front of the house to let the thieves know, hey, new appliances are being installed. So this gives you an idea of our construction special investigations, and Ozzy and I are working hard with our realtors, with our contractors, with the building industries associations to try to help all of us do our part to report anything to 911 or 477-1000 is our number. Cape Coral has theirs for a non-emergency to come check something out if it looks out of place or weird. We have an app that you can download, and we also have are on social media. So feel free to connect with us there. And if there's any questions before you get to go to lunch and eat, I'll be glad to entertain them.
Well, thank you so much for sharing that information and being so involved with, I know the construction is booming and prices have skyrocketed. And I was speaking with some builders and they were telling me some of their experiences of a lot of their lumber just disappearing in there. So having those, I didn't know you can put little trackers on the lumber, and that's awesome. you guys feel free to unmute yourself if you have any questions or put it in the chat, and I can be able to read it for you on your behalf. Let's see, anything new here? Not yet.
Everybody's ready to go to lunch.
She is standing between you and lunch right now, right?
That's right.
No pressure, no pressure.
Better than being at the very end when everybody's wanting to go home.
Pretty much, but you know what? One thing I have learned with our professionals is that when you have a hot topic, they stay on.
That's true.
No matter what time, the time can fly by and they are totally alert. So we thank them for that, and for you all being a part of this ACET lead and giving us those nuggets that we can use.
Thank you for having me. I'm glad to be back again.
Yes, yes. All right, well, I am not seeing any. So does that mean you guys get an early lunch? Is that what it means? All right, well, I guess we're going to go ahead and wrap it up. I'm going to give a big thanks and shout out to Lee School District, Adam Malloy, for joining us and giving us that information. Fish and Wildlife Commission, Alicia O'Connor, and Lee County Sheriff, Kim Swanson. Thank you so much. We appreciate everything that you have done for the community, for us in general. And we are going to go ahead and let you all let loose for early lunch. Stay logged on. Come back here at 1 o'clock. Feel free, to do whatever you need to do, but just keep your monitors on. But if you need to go ahead and log off, just use that link that you have that was sent to you to be able to log back on. So everyone have a great lunch. And maybe you guys can put in the chat what you have for lunch. So yeah, so we'll see you at 1 p.m. Thank you all. It is lunchtime now.